Hey everyone, this chapter is going to go into more detail about the Charge Description Master or CDM. It's also called the Charge Master, so you can use all three of those interchangeably. And it is the database that lists out every possible item that could produce a charge on a patient's account. So this is a very important part of the revenue cycle. Really, it's at the center of the revenue cycle. But it has all of the facilities, procedures, tests, drugs, supplies, etc. Listed out with all of the CPT codes and a few other things. The charge master staff has to really stay on top of all the different departments, so lab, pharmacy, nursing, etc., to make sure they're all reporting services and supplies correctly, and adding new charges or taking away things they don't use anymore, so they can accurately capture the charge and the hospital can get paid accurately as well. Each billable service or supply is entered into the charge master and is given an internal charge code number, which just makes it easier for billing and looking at trends in the hospital. Like you could run a report showing all of the charges having to do with internal charge code 12345 or whatever. Next is all of the data elements that are in the charge master. And for this, I just want to show you the sample one from your textbook. Okay, so I'm going to switch to just me for a minute. You should be able to pull this up on your e-textbook, but it has the department code here on this side. Each department has like a numerical code to easily identify them. So this is going to be different for every hospital. And then the charge code, which I just mentioned, every service, device, drug, etc. is going to have a different code. And this is also specific to the hospital. It's going to be different at every facility. So that does not go on the bill, the patient's bill. And then the charge code description is just the text that says what the service or item is. Then we have revenue codes. These are universal. Every hospital will use the same revenue codes. They're 4-digit codes that give like a general identification of what the charge is for. And this is required on every line item of a billing claim. Then we have CPT codes, which are HCPCS level 1 codes, and then we have HCPCS level 2 codes. Remember, these are like the 5-digit numeric and sometimes alphanumeric codes that are also universal. All hospitals and doctors' offices will use these to represent any services or supplies. Then we have modifiers. They just kind of give us more detail about the CPT code, and they usually indicate laterality, so like left or right side of the body. So they can only be used with certain codes because not every body part has a left and right side, right? They can also be used to describe digits like big toe, like right big toe, or left pinky toe or something like that. And then the price is the charge for the line item. The Medicare or Medicaid reimbursement rates for that particular service or supply will usually help to set that price. And different hospitals could have other elements, like dates the charge code was created, or different things like that. But generally, they're all going to have those things I just showed you. Okay, let's see. So there are electronic order entry systems that help capture the charge when a service is given. Computerized provider order entry, or CPOE, refers to the process of providers entering and sending treatment instructions. Treatment instructions are also known as doctor's orders. So this is when they order like a medication for a patient, or lab work, or radiology, some sort of x-ray. Doctors used to have to do this by either calling on the phone, talking to a nurse, telling them what they want, or faxing something over, or writing it down on like a doctor's order paper. Now they can do it electronically, so it's a lot easier for them. Another really cool thing about this is that the order is automatically checked for potential errors. So like dosage errors, or if the patient has an allergy to a certain medication, um, or if there's a drug interaction with like something the patient's already taking, it will alert the doctor that they can't prescribe this new medication. So that's really cool. Okay, the charge description master, or CDM, is where the charge information is accessed and sent to the billing system to either create a charge, or an itemized bill and create a claim. Charges are typically captured in one of two ways. They're either hard-coded or soft-coded. Hard-coded charges happen automatically. So when the patient receives the service, someone is adding the charge code into the computer. And if you remember on the sample charge master I showed you, the CPT and HCPCS codes are in there with the charge code. So it'll automatically link the CPT and HCPCS codes to it. On the other side of things, we have the doctor documenting the service in the electronic health record. And so then the medical coder is going to look at it and apply the correct CPT code, which is attached to the charge when the bill is generated. So think of it like this. Hard coding is done automatically. Soft coding is done by the medical coder. Okay. The CDM, and I'm just going to call it the CDM just so we're all on the same page, the Charge Description Master, is constantly being updated with new procedures, or discontinuing procedures, updating CPT or HCPCS codes, etc. It's changing a lot. Sometimes CMS will change their reimbursement guidelines, so that could also cause some changes. And then every year there's an update to the ICD-10 and CPT codes, every quarter for HCPCS Level 2 codes. So all of these things have to be looked at and updated regularly so that everything's accurate. So the hospital's getting paid, for all of their work. There are people whose jobs are to be constantly monitoring for updates, basically. Some CDMs can have tens of thousands of line items, so keeping it up to date is a very big task. There are some automated systems that can maintain CDMs, which are good to help with like catching errors before the claims are submitted, but it does take a lot of personnel as well to stay on top of it. Okay, now why does all this maintenance matter? The CDM has to comply with all regulatory requirements so that your hospital is compliant during any government audits. And if your hospital is confident in your CDM and know that the information is always accurate and up to date, then they can use the CDM to monitor the cost of care and compile cost accounting data. If something is not accurate in the CDM and there are errors on the bill, then it holds up the claim process and could reduce the hospital's revenue, which they don't like that when that happens. The American Academy of Professional Coders recommends that to maintain accurate CDMs, facilities should use these 3 C's: correct, complete, and compliant. So check that the correct codes are billed. Make sure the CDM code sets are complete so the hospital can capture all of the charges, for the services they provided, and to be aware of compliance requirements, making sure the CDM is compliant with coding standards, all federal, state, and commercial payer rules, and things like that. Because sometimes if you're not adhering to regulations, you could be committing healthcare fraud and abuse. And maybe you don't even realize it. So this is very important. One way facilities can make sure they're not committing any sort of fraud and abuse is by doing monthly complete charge audits on clinical departments. So looking to see if there are any inappropriate charges, if they're using the correct revenue codes or the correct CPT and HCPCS codes, or that services your facility no longer offer are not still being used, things like that. There are best practice protocols that should be used to make sure the charges reflect the service that was performed. The key things here is routine monitoring and auditing. Even if you're confident in everyone's training, you still have to be regularly looking to make sure everything's accurate. Root cause investigations to identify charge capture variances. Okay, so when you find a problem, you need to dig into it and see what caused this problem so that you can then do number 3, implement remediation processes to both resolve and prevent issues. What do we need to change so that this problem doesn't happen again? Okay. The CDM can also be used as a contract negotiation tool. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. Just know that facilities can look at the CDM and try to find areas that are not being reimbursed highly and try to negotiate higher payments for those areas in their managed care contracts with payers. Okay. Most hospitals will have a charge master manager or coordinator that will oversee the CDM and work with a CDM committee or review team that has people from different hospital departments in it. So someone from the admissions department, registration and scheduling, compliance, billing, IT, HIM, and even some of the ancillary departments like the lab, pharmacy, nursing, and doctors. So this committee will review the CDM at least once a year to make sure all of the CPT, HCPCS, and revenue codes are compliant, make sure all of the charge dollar amounts are correct, make sure new services or things that are being added are correct, old things that are no longer used are being removed in a timely manner, making sure there's no duplications, things like that. Any request to make a change to the CDM has to be submitted by a clinical department manager. And this typically happens if a department notices a code is incorrect or has been updated, or a service needs to be added or removed, or there's a price change. Okay. The change request form can be on paper or electronic, whatever the hospital policy states. And it has to include the reason for the change request and any other necessary information. The charge master coordinator is who will get the request, and they'll look over it and verify, does the change need to be made, and, things like that. Okay. All right. Last slide for us here. Got a short little chapter today. Revenue cycle management has become more complicated for doctors' offices or like group practices because of the required use of EHR technology and the change to value-based reimbursement, right? Getting paid for quality care. Because it's a lot easier and more feasible for a large hospital to have like a sophisticated system that does all of this stuff, than it is for a solo doctor's practice or a group practice. This makes having a dependable CDM very important for a doctor's practice to make sure there are no overlooked or unbilled encounters or missing charges, right? So that they can get all their money. Doctors, whether they have a solo practice or in a group practice, will use practice management software to schedule appointments. And some of the software can capture charges and look for, locate unbilled charges, perform charge capture audits. So they can do extra stuff. It just depends on what the practice uses. So they really make it easier on the doctors or the office managers to stay on top of this stuff because they can help prevent claim rejections and hopefully get the doctor's office paid faster and just streamline workflow in general. Okay. All right. That is it for this chapter. Let me know if y'all have any questions, and I'll see y'all next time.